The video appeared online at 11:43 p.m. Only 12 people could see Ethan Cole's private account, and most of them were close friends from college. At first, nobody paid much attention to the notification. Ethan was known for late-night jokes, strange edits, and occasional attempts to scare people with fake horror clips. The thumbnail showed nothing but darkness. Then they pressed play. For 17 seconds, the camera shook violently as Ethan ran through a forest at night. Branches snapped beneath his feet. His breathing sounded ragged and terrified. Several times he looked behind him, as though something was following him through the trees. The footage was grainy, distorted by movement and weak light, but one thing was impossible to miss. Ethan looked genuinely afraid. The video ended abruptly. No caption. No explanation. No follow-up message. Just silence. His friend Mason watched it 3 times before sending a text. "Okay, that was creepy. Where are you?" No response came. Others reacted similarly. A few laughed. One accused Ethan of creating an elaborate prank. Another guessed he was filming a short movie. As midnight passed, the messages became more frequent. Still nothing. By morning, concern replaced amusement. Ethan had missed work at a local electronics store. His phone went straight to voicemail. His apartment remained locked. His car was gone, but nobody knew where he had been the night before. Around noon, Ethan's older sister, Rebecca, reported him missing. The case landed on the desk of Detective Rachel Monroe late that afternoon. Rachel had investigated enough disappearances to recognize the difference between ordinary absence and something darker. Young adults sometimes vanished for a few days. Arguments, stress, debt, relationships, there were countless reasons. But the video bothered her immediately. She watched it alone in her office. Once. Then again. The fear on Ethan's face felt wrong for a staged recording. "Pull everything from his account," she told a digital forensic technician. "Messages, uploads, location history. I want all of it." The process began within hours. Meanwhile, search teams focused on the limited clues available. Ethan's last known phone signal originated near Blackwood Forest, a sprawling wilderness stretching miles beyond town limits. Volunteers joined deputies along hiking trails and dirt roads. Drones scanned sections of woodland before darkness returned. Nothing was found. No Ethan. No phone. No vehicle. As the search continued, forensic specialists examined the uploaded clip more closely. One discovery stood out. The video had not been manually posted. Metadata showed it uploaded automatically moments after Ethan's phone lost network connection. The file had been scheduled beforehand, suggesting he expected something to happen, or feared he might not have another opportunity to send evidence. That detail changed everything. Rachel watched the footage again that evening. She slowed it down. Frame by frame. Trees blurred past. Darkness swallowed most of the screen. Ethan glanced over his shoulder. For an instant, the image distorted. Rachel paused. Rewound. Played it again. Something appeared near the edge of the frame. At first she assumed it was a tree trunk. Then she noticed movement. "Enhance that section," she said quietly. The technician adjusted brightness and contrast. Pixels shifted across the monitor. A shape emerged behind Ethan. Human. Standing among the trees. Watching. The image remained frustratingly unclear, more shadow than person. No facial features could be identified. No clothing details were visible. Yet the figure was unmistakably there. Rachel felt a chill crawl up her spine. Because whoever was behind Ethan in that final frame was not running. They were calmly following him. And somehow, that made the footage far more terrifying. The image of the shadowy figure lingered in Rachel Monroe's mind long after she left the station. Most missing person cases began with uncertainty, but Ethan Cole's disappearance already felt connected to something larger. The calm posture of the figure behind him suggested confidence, not panic. Whoever it was had no reason to run. The following morning, Rachel gathered with the forensic team to continue analyzing the 17-second clip. Every frame was isolated and enlarged. The process was slow, producing little more than blurred shapes and digital noise. Then frame 7 changed everything. A technician named Aaron leaned toward his monitor and froze the image. "Wait," he said. Rachel stepped closer. Between 2 trees, partially hidden by darkness, stood a young woman. Unlike the figure behind Ethan, she appeared motionless. Her pale face reflected just enough light to separate her from the surrounding forest. She seemed to be staring directly toward the camera. Nobody spoke for several seconds. "Can you sharpen it?" Rachel asked. Aaron adjusted the image repeatedly. The results remained imperfect, but the woman's features gradually became clearer. Rachel felt a jolt of recognition. She had seen that face before. Within an hour, old case files confirmed her suspicion. The woman was Lily Harper. 3 years earlier, Lily had disappeared during her second year of college. She had left a friend's apartment after a small gathering and was never seen again. Despite extensive searches, investigators found no body, no suspect, and no explanation. The case eventually went cold. Now Lily had somehow appeared inside Ethan's final video. Rachel retrieved the archived file and spent the afternoon reviewing every detail. Lily had been 21 years old. Ethan was 23. Both disappeared near Blackwood Forest. Both vanished at night. Both left behind electronic traces that abruptly ended. The similarities were disturbing enough. What troubled Rachel even more was a statement buried deep within Lily's file. A witness had reported seeing Lily running through trees shortly before she vanished. The claim had been dismissed because no evidence supported it. Now there was evidence. Rachel began constructing a timeline on her office wall. Photographs, maps, and notes slowly spread across the board. As connections emerged, a darker possibility took shape. These were not isolated incidents. Someone could have been selecting victims for years. Late that evening, journalist Noah Price arrived at the station requesting information. Rachel recognized his name from previous investigations. Noah had a reputation for uncovering stories others overlooked. "I heard about Ethan," he said. "People are talking. They always do. This feels different." Rachel did not answer. Noah studied the files scattered across her desk. "You think there's a connection to older disappearances, don't you?" The question lingered between them. "Right now," Rachel replied carefully, "I think there are more questions than answers." Noah nodded, though his expression suggested he was unconvinced. After he left, Rachel returned to the forensic lab. Aaron was still examining data extracted from Ethan's phone. "Any luck?" she asked. "Maybe." He rotated his monitor toward her. Lines of metadata filled the screen. Most of it was ordinary information tied to the recording and upload process. One section, however, appeared unusual. Hidden beneath corrupted entries was a string of numbers. Aaron highlighted them. "At first I thought it was damaged code," he said. "Then I checked the format." Rachel stared at the sequence. Latitude. Longitude. GPS coordinates. Someone had embedded a location inside the file. The room suddenly felt smaller. Rachel copied the numbers and entered them into a mapping program. A red marker appeared on the screen. The coordinates pointed to a remote section of Blackwood Forest. Far from trails. Far from roads. Far from anywhere people normally went. Rachel's pulse quickened as she stared at the map. Because whatever waited at that location might finally explain what happened to Ethan. And what happened to Lily Harper. The coordinates discovered inside Ethan Cole's metadata left little room for doubt. By sunrise, Detective Rachel Monroe and a small search team were heading toward the remote section of Blackwood Forest marked on the map. The location sat miles from the nearest road, hidden beneath thick pine canopies that blocked sunlight and swallowed sound. Branches clawed at their jackets. Damp earth sank beneath their boots. Even experienced deputies seemed uneasy as they pushed forward through the dense wilderness. After nearly 2 hours, they reached a clearing. An abandoned hunting cabin stood at its center. The structure looked forgotten by time. Its windows were broken. Parts of the roof had collapsed inward. Moss covered the wooden walls, and vines twisted around the porch supports. "Doesn't look like anyone's been here for years," one deputy muttered. Rachel wasn't convinced. Something about the place felt wrong. The cabin itself contained little of interest. Dust covered most surfaces, and animal tracks crossed the floorboards. Yet Rachel noticed faint scratches near a rusted metal stove. The marks appeared newer than everything else. She knelt beside them. "Hear that?" she asked. One deputy tapped the floor. A hollow sound echoed beneath the boards. Minutes later, investigators pried them open. Below was a concealed storage space. Nobody spoke as flashlights illuminated the contents. Boxes. Dozens of them. Carefully organized. Rachel climbed down first. Inside the nearest container were old cameras wrapped in plastic. Some were decades old. Others were relatively modern. Beside them sat stacks of memory cards, batteries, hard drives, and recording equipment. The discovery transformed the missing person investigation into something far darker. Forensic technicians were called immediately. As more boxes were opened, additional evidence emerged. A silver necklace. A university identification card. A wristwatch. A child's keychain. Each item belonged to someone who had vanished. Rachel recognized several names from cold case files. Victims. Not one. Not two. Many. Whoever had hidden this collection had preserved trophies from disappearances spanning years. By evening, the evidence filled multiple vehicles. The memory cards proved especially disturbing. Many were damaged by moisture and age, but technicians managed to recover fragments from several of them. The footage showed strangers being observed from a distance. A woman walking home. A man jogging alone. A teenager waiting at a bus stop. The recordings lasted days, sometimes weeks. The camera operator never interacted with the subjects. They studied. Followed. Rachel felt sick as she reviewed clip after clip. The pattern suggested planning and obsession. Victims were selected long before they vanished. Someone had been documenting their routines, learning their habits, and tracking their movements. This was not random violence. It was a process. A hunt. Rachel threw herself into the investigation with growing intensity. She slept little and spent nearly every waking hour examining evidence. The owner of the equipment became her sole focus. But resistance appeared almost immediately. Requests for older records were delayed. Archived reports arrived incomplete. Several supervisors questioned whether she was overextending resources. The objections made no sense. The discovery beneath the cabin should have triggered full departmental support. Instead, doors seemed to close whenever Rachel approached them. One evening she confronted a senior official about missing files. The man avoided eye contact. "Some cases are better left buried," he said. Rachel stared at him. "Missing people aren't paperwork," she replied. "They deserve answers." He offered none. The conversation only deepened her suspicion that someone wanted the investigation contained. Late the next night, a forensic technician rushed into her office carrying fresh recovery results. "We found one that works," he said. Rachel stood immediately. "A memory card." He nodded. Unlike the others, this card was nearly intact. The recovered video opened on a dark forest path illuminated by moonlight. The timestamp appeared in the corner. Rachel's stomach tightened. The recording had not been made years ago. It had been recorded only 2 days earlier. The timestamp on the recovered memory card left Rachel Monroe staring silently at the screen. 2 days. The footage had been recorded only 2 days before investigators discovered the hidden bunker beneath the hunting cabin. Whoever owned the equipment had not disappeared years ago. They were still active. The realization sent a wave of urgency through the investigation. Forensic specialists copied the file and began analyzing every frame. Rachel watched beside them as the recording played. At first, nothing seemed unusual. A woman exited a grocery store carrying shopping bags. The camera followed from across the parking lot. The footage was stable, deliberate, and patient. The woman never noticed she was being watched. The recording continued over several days. The same woman appeared at different locations. A coffee shop. A gas station. Her apartment building. A public park. Someone had documented her routine with terrifying precision. The next video showed a different target. Then another. And another. Rachel soon noticed a pattern. Each recording stretched across weeks or months. The stalker studied victims long before they vanished. Every habit was catalogued. Every schedule was learned. The victims were not chosen randomly. They were selected, observed, prepared. The viewers never saw the stalker's face. Only clues. Occasionally his shadow crossed the frame. Sometimes the camera tilted toward the ground, revealing worn boots moving through dirt or fallen leaves. Most disturbing of all was the breathing. Slow, calm, patient. It echoed through nearly every recording. Rachel found herself recognizing it instantly whenever a new clip began. The sound felt almost personal, as though the person behind the camera enjoyed watching. Hours turned into days as investigators sorted through recovered evidence. During that process, Rachel made another discovery. Several victims had unknowingly crossed paths before disappearing. A woman missing from 5 years earlier appeared briefly in the background of another victim's video. A college student vanished in 2020 after attending an outdoor concert where 2 future victims were also present. One recording even showed Lily Harper passing Ethan Cole months before either disappearance became known. The connections seemed impossible. Yet there they were. Victims linked together through chance encounters they likely never remembered. Rachel covered an entire wall with photographs and timelines. Strings connected names, dates, locations. The network grew larger every day. Someone had been tracking people for years, quietly documenting their lives before they vanished. Meanwhile, journalist Noah Price continued investigating on his own. Rachel had warned him to stay away from the case. He ignored her. Noah spent days interviewing family members of missing persons and reviewing public records. Unlike police investigators, he could move freely through the community without attracting attention. His search eventually led him toward an unexpected pattern. Several victims had attended charity events sponsored by prominent local figures. At first the connection seemed meaningless. The town's leaders appeared at countless public functions. But one name surfaced repeatedly. A respected community member admired by nearly everyone. The individual had donated money to schools, organized public fundraisers, and supported countless local projects. Noah struggled to believe the connection himself. The person appeared above suspicion. Yet the name kept returning. Every new document seemed to point in the same direction. Late one evening, Noah sat alone in his apartment reviewing notes spread across his kitchen table. Rain tapped softly against the windows. His laptop glowed in the darkness. The evidence remained circumstantial, but his instincts told him he was moving closer to something important. Then his phone vibrated. A new message had arrived from an unknown number. Noah frowned. The sender contained no identifying information. He opened the message. His blood immediately ran cold. There was no greeting. No explanation. Only a single sentence. Stop digging, or you'll be the next recording. For several seconds, Noah simply stared at the screen. Then another message appeared. This time it contained a video attachment. A short clip. Only 15 seconds long. With trembling hands, Noah pressed play. The footage showed someone standing across the street from his apartment building, holding a camera, watching his window. The video sent to Noah Price changed everything. Within an hour, he contacted Detective Rachel Monroe and showed her the threatening message. The footage clearly proved someone was monitoring him in real time. Whoever operated the network hidden beneath Blackwood Forest was aware of the investigation and willing to intimidate anyone who got too close. Rachel immediately ordered digital analysts to trace the sender. The effort produced nothing. The number was unregistered. The signal bounced through multiple locations. It was as if the sender had planned for every possibility. The threat only strengthened Rachel's belief that the case extended far beyond a single stalker. Someone was protecting secrets. Someone with resources. As investigators continued reviewing Ethan Cole's personal records, a surprising lead emerged. For months before his disappearance, Ethan had been communicating with a woman named Claire Morgan. At first glance, the messages appeared harmless. Then detectives noticed their frequency. Hundreds of conversations. Late-night phone calls. Private meetings. Deleted text chains. The pattern pointed toward a hidden relationship. Background checks revealed another complication. Claire Morgan was married. 34 years old, she worked as a financial consultant and lived across town with her husband. Nothing in her public life suggested any connection to Ethan. Yet the evidence was undeniable. Rachel arranged an interview. Claire arrived at the station looking composed but nervous. She wore a dark coat despite the warm afternoon and avoided eye contact whenever Ethan's name surfaced. "Did you know Ethan Cole?" Rachel asked. "Only casually." Rachel slid several printed messages across the table. Claire's expression tightened. "Those conversations don't look casual." For several moments, silence filled the room. Finally, Claire lowered her head. "Yes," she whispered. The relationship had begun nearly a year earlier. What started as friendship evolved into something deeper. According to Claire, they met secretly whenever possible. Neither had intended for it to happen. Eventually, however, emotions overpowered caution. Rachel listened carefully. What changed? Claire's hands trembled slightly. Ethan became scared. Of what? He thought someone was watching him. Rachel leaned forward. "Tell me everything." Claire described a steady progression of fear during the weeks leading to Ethan's disappearance. At first, he noticed unfamiliar cars parked near his apartment. Then strangers seemed to appear repeatedly in places he visited. Coffee shops, parking lots, restaurants. He claimed people were following him. Claire initially believed stress was affecting his judgment. But Ethan became increasingly convinced that someone was recording his movements. He said he kept seeing the same shadow, Claire explained. No matter where he went. Rachel immediately thought of the surveillance footage recovered from the cabin. What did he do? He started documenting everything. Claire reached into her purse and removed a small flash drive. "He sent me this 3 days before he disappeared." Rachel accepted it carefully. "For safekeeping." Claire nodded. "He told me if anything happened, someone needed to know." The drive contained encrypted files. Forensic specialists spent hours breaking through security protections. When the contents finally opened, the room fell silent. Ethan had been recording evidence. Photographs showed distant figures standing near locations he frequented. Videos captured unknown individuals lingering outside his apartment. One clip showed a vehicle parked across the street for nearly 6 hours. Another revealed someone filming from behind a line of trees. The footage became increasingly disturbing as investigators reviewed it. Ethan had not been imagining things. Someone really had been watching him. Then technicians discovered a final folder. Unlike the others, this collection contained recordings Ethan appeared reluctant to label. Rachel opened the first video. The image was dark and shaky. Trees surrounded a narrow clearing deep inside Blackwood Forest. A woman entered the frame. Rachel immediately recognized her. Claire Morgan. The married woman looked nervous as she stepped into the clearing. Several moments later, another figure emerged from the darkness. The camera angle made identification impossible. But one thing was clear. Claire had secretly met someone in the forest. And she had never mentioned it. The footage of Claire Morgan standing in a forest clearing created more questions than answers. Rachel Monroe watched the recording repeatedly, hoping to identify the second figure who emerged from the darkness. The person's face remained hidden throughout the encounter. Only a silhouette appeared before the video abruptly ended. When Rachel confronted Claire the next morning, the woman looked exhausted. The confidence she had shown during their first interview was gone. "You lied to me," Rachel said, placing a photograph from the footage on the table. Claire stared at the image. Her face turned pale. For several moments she said nothing. Then she quietly nodded. "Yes." "Who are you meeting?" Claire swallowed hard. "I can't tell you." "You can." "No," she whispered. "You don't understand." Rachel leaned forward. "Then help me understand." Claire's eyes filled with fear. Not embarrassment. Not guilt. Fear. The kind Rachel had seen in victims who believed danger was still close. Finally, Claire began speaking. Years earlier, before she ever met Ethan, she had witnessed something near Blackwood Forest. She had been driving home late at night after a work event. While taking a shortcut along an isolated road, she noticed a vehicle parked near the trees. At first, she ignored it. Then she heard screaming. The sound came from deeper inside the forest. Curiosity overcame caution. Claire left her car and moved toward the noise. What she found haunted her for years. A young woman was being attacked. The victim struggled desperately while a man forced her toward a vehicle. Claire watched from behind dense brush, terrified to move. She wanted to call the police. She wanted to help. Instead, she froze. Then the attacker briefly stepped into the moonlight. Claire recognized him instantly. Not because she knew him personally. Because everyone in town knew who he was. A respected figure. Powerful. Connected. The kind of person whose name appeared at charity events and public ceremonies. Claire fled before she was seen. The following day she convinced herself the police would handle it. Days became weeks. Weeks became years. She remained silent. Rachel listened carefully. Who was he? Claire looked toward the door. Then toward the window. Her breathing quickened. I'll tell you, she said softly. But not here. Rachel arranged protective custody immediately. Given the threats surrounding the investigation, she refused to take chances. Claire was moved to a small roadside motel outside town. 2 officers monitored the location while Rachel prepared for another interview the following morning. For the first time, Rachel felt they were close. Very close. The witness had finally decided to talk. All they needed was a name. But when Rachel arrived the next day, Claire was gone. The motel room stood empty. The bed remained untouched. Her purse sat on a chair. Her phone rested on the nightstand. Only Claire had vanished. Panic spread through the investigation. Security footage quickly provided an apparent explanation. The cameras showed Claire opening her motel room door shortly after midnight. She stepped outside, walked calmly across the parking lot, then disappeared beyond the camera's view. There were no signs of force. No visible struggle. Nothing suggested an abduction. Some investigators immediately concluded she had fled voluntarily. Rachel disagreed. Something felt wrong. Claire had been terrified. She knew dangerous information. Walking away alone made no sense. Determined to find answers, Rachel requested enhanced analysis of the surveillance footage. Forensic technicians enlarged every frame. Minute by minute. Second by second. Hours passed. Then one analyst suddenly froze the video. "Detective," he said. Rachel hurried over. The technician pointed toward the edge of the screen. Almost invisible within the darkness stood a figure. Motionless. Waiting beside Claire's room before she opened the door. The person never approached. Never knocked. They simply stood there. As though they already knew she was coming outside. And somehow expected her to follow. The figure waiting outside Claire Morgan's motel room transformed the investigation overnight. Rachel Monroe no longer believed she was chasing a lone predator. Someone had anticipated Claire's movements before she ever stepped outside. Whether through manipulation, threats, or something even darker, the witness had vanished at the exact moment she was prepared to reveal a powerful name. The pressure surrounding the case intensified. Rachel spent the following days digging through old records connected to Blackwood Forest and previous disappearances. What she found disturbed her more than any surveillance footage. Case after case contained irregularities. Witness statements had disappeared. Evidence logs were incomplete. Search operations had ended abruptly despite promising leads. Several missing person investigations were closed with astonishing speed. At first, Rachel considered incompetence. Then she noticed a pattern. The same officials appeared repeatedly throughout the files. Supervisors who signed closure reports. Administrators who denied additional resources. Individuals who redirected investigations away from Blackwood Forest. The coincidences became impossible to ignore. Someone had been suppressing information. Not once, Repeatedly. For years. One file involved a missing college student whose backpack was discovered less than a mile from the abandoned hunting cabin. Investigators never searched the surrounding area. Another victim left behind recordings suggesting she was being followed. The footage was never processed. A third case included eyewitness testimony describing suspicious activity near the forest. The statement vanished from official records. Rachel sat alone in the archive room late one evening, surrounded by decades of forgotten reports. Every document seemed to reveal another buried truth. The disappearances had never been properly investigated. They had been managed, controlled, directed away from dangerous discoveries. Meanwhile, Noah Price pursued a different lead. The journalist spent days interviewing retired officers and examining public records. Many refused to speak. Others claimed they remembered nothing. Eventually, one former dispatcher agreed to meet privately. The conversation produced a name: Thomas Grayson, a retired police officer. At first, the connection seemed insignificant. Grayson had served the community for decades and earned a reputation for professionalism. But Noah kept digging. The deeper he looked, the stranger the connections became. Grayson had worked or consulted on nearly every major missing person investigation linked to Rachel's growing timeline. Sometimes he arrived first at a scene. Other times he reviewed evidence. In several cases, he recommended ending active searches. The overlap was astonishing. Noah covered an entire wall of his apartment with photographs and notes. Again and again, the same name surfaced: Thomas Grayson. The discovery did not prove guilt, but it demanded answers. Rachel received Noah's findings during another sleepless night at the station. She had barely gone home in recent weeks. Most evenings blurred together beneath fluorescent lights and computer screens. The recovered recordings consumed her attention. Hundreds of hours of surveillance footage waited to be reviewed. Every victim had a story. Every recording ended in uncertainty. The emotional weight began taking its toll. Rachel started hearing sounds that weren't there. A branch scraping outside a window. Footsteps behind her in empty hallways. Breathing. Always breathing. The same slow breathing that haunted the recordings. She told herself exhaustion was responsible. Nothing more. Yet the feeling persisted. The sense of being watched followed her everywhere. At gas stations. Parking lots. Coffee shops. Even home. One night, after leaving the station shortly before midnight, Rachel noticed headlights lingering behind her vehicle for several blocks. When she changed direction, the car changed direction. When she accelerated, it accelerated. The vehicle eventually disappeared. But the unease remained. By the time she reached her apartment, her nerves felt raw. Rachel locked the door and moved directly toward the living room window. Something outside caught her attention. A faint reflection. A small glimmer hidden across the street. She narrowed her eyes. Then grabbed a flashlight. Moments later she crossed the road and approached an abandoned utility pole facing her apartment building. The object attached to it was nearly invisible. Small. Black. Carefully concealed. Rachel's stomach tightened as she examined it. A camera. Recently installed. Pointed directly at her apartment windows. Someone had been watching her too. Victor Hale's death shattered any hope of a quick resolution. Instead of answers, Rachel Monroe found herself staring at a crime scene that raised even more questions. The message on the wall made one thing painfully clear. Someone larger, smarter, and far more dangerous remained hidden behind the investigation. The true architect was still out there. 4 days, detectives searched Victor's property. Hard drives, notebooks, financial records, and decades of personal files were seized. Most contained evidence of surveillance, victim profiles, and coded references to people Rachel had never identified. Then a breakthrough arrived from an unexpected source. A local woman contacted the department after seeing news coverage connected to Victor Hale. Her name was Emma Brooks. Rachel immediately recognized it. Emma's name appeared repeatedly throughout the recovered archive, yet unlike most victims, she had never officially been listed as missing. Investigators arranged a private meeting. When Emma entered the interview room, Rachel noticed the fear in her eyes. It was the same fear she had seen in Claire Morgan. The same fear visible in Ethan Cole's final video. Emma hesitated before speaking. "I thought he was dead," she said. "Who?" Rachel asked. "The man behind everything." Rachel remained silent. For nearly 2 hours, Emma described events she had hidden for years. 7 years earlier, she became aware that someone was watching her. At first, the incident seemed harmless. Strange vehicles appeared near her apartment. Unfamiliar people lingered outside places she visited. Then the surveillance escalated. Emma discovered photographs taken through her bedroom window. She received anonymous messages describing private conversations. Someone knew where she worked, where she shopped, who she loved. The intrusion became unbearable. One night, while driving near Blackwood Forest, Emma noticed headlights following her. She attempted to escape but was forced off the road. The next several days remained fragmented in her memory. She remembered a basement, cameras, questions, voices speaking from behind darkness. Most importantly, she remembered 2 men. One was Victor Hale. The second man never revealed his identity. "He gave the orders," Emma whispered. "Victor listened to him." Rachel felt her pulse quicken. "What did he look like?" "I never saw his face clearly." "Anything you remember matters." Emma closed her eyes. "He was charming, calm, educated. The kind of person everyone trusted." The description matched countless people. Yet it reinforced Rachel's growing belief that the mastermind occupied a respected position within the community. Emma eventually escaped after a security mistake left a door unlocked. Terrified, she fled the state and built a new life under constant fear. She never reported what happened. She believed nobody would believe her. Now, after seeing Victor's face on television, she realized the nightmare had returned. Emma agreed to provide formal testimony. For the first time, Rachel possessed a living witness who could directly connect Victor to the disappearances. The department immediately arranged protection. Meanwhile, Noah Price continued investigating the network surrounding Victor. Financial records revealed connections between influential community leaders, retired officials, and individuals who repeatedly appeared near victim timelines. The web of relationships grew larger each day. Someone had spent years protecting the operation. Rachel finally felt momentum shifting. Then everything collapsed. The night before Emma's official statement, officers arrived at her safe house for a routine check. The front door was locked. The alarm remained active. Nothing appeared unusual. Until they entered. Emma was gone. No signs of violence existed. No broken windows. No evidence of forced entry. Only an empty room. Rachel rushed to the scene. Her stomach sank as she surveyed the house. A familiar feeling settled over her. The same feeling she experienced when Claire vanished. Someone had reached another witness. Someone always seemed one step ahead. On the kitchen table sat a single memory card. No note. No fingerprints. Just the card. Outside, flashing police lights reflected across the windows while detectives searched the surrounding streets. Nobody found a trace of Emma. The disappearance felt impossible, almost rehearsed, as though unseen hands had guided every event toward this exact moment alone tonight. Rachel stared at it in silence. Because deep down, she already knew what it meant. The game was not over. It was entering its most dangerous stage yet. Victor Hale's death should have ended the investigation. Instead, it opened a deeper wound. The message written above his body haunted Rachel Monroe for days. Collectors can be replaced. Those words suggested Victor had never been the true leader. He had been a tool, a caretaker, perhaps even a disposable asset. Somewhere beyond the evidence, another person remained hidden. While detectives processed material seized from Victor's property, a surprising phone call arrived at the station. A woman claimed she had seen herself in one of the recovered surveillance videos released to the public. Her name was Emma Brooks. Rachel arranged a meeting. When Emma entered the interview room, she appeared nervous and exhausted. Dark circles surrounded her eyes, and her hands trembled whenever the conversation approached Blackwood Forest. For several minutes she struggled to speak. Then the story began to emerge. 7 years earlier, Emma had become convinced someone was watching her. At first the incidents seemed insignificant. A stranger appeared repeatedly at places she visited. Unfamiliar vehicles parked outside her apartment. Anonymous messages arrived without explanation. Eventually the behavior escalated. Photographs taken through her windows appeared in her mailbox. Personal information surfaced online. Someone seemed to know her daily routine better than she did. Emma reported several incidents, but no meaningful investigation followed. Looking back, Rachel understood why. The network had influence. It had protection. And it had people positioned to make reports disappear. One night Emma was followed while driving near Blackwood Forest. She attempted to escape but lost control of her vehicle on a remote road. The next memories came in fragments. A locked room. Bright lights. Cameras mounted on walls. Voices discussing her as though she were an object rather than a person. Most importantly, she remembered 2 men. One of them was Victor Hale. The second man remained hidden in darkness. Rachel leaned forward. "You never saw his face?" "Not clearly," Emma replied. "What do you remember?" Emma closed her eyes. "His voice." Rachel waited. He sounded educated. Calm. Confident. The kind of person people trust immediately. The description matched countless public figures, but Emma continued. He wasn't afraid of being caught. Everyone listened to him, including Victor. The room fell silent. Rachel finally understood how the operation survived for decades. Victor had handled surveillance and collection. Others buried evidence. Meanwhile, a respected leader coordinated everything from the shadows. The disappearances were not simply the work of a predator. They were protected by a network. Over the following days, Emma reviewed photographs and records recovered during the investigation. One image triggered an immediate reaction. Her face turned pale. She pointed at a man standing beside several local officials during a charity fundraiser. "I know him," she whispered. The identification sent shockwaves through the task force. The man was one of the town's most admired community leaders. He had spent years raising money for schools, supporting public projects, and appearing beside elected officials. Nobody would suspect him. That was exactly why he had remained hidden. Rachel and Noah Price spent the next 48 hours gathering evidence. Financial records, communications, and witness statements slowly formed a devastating picture. The case was finally coming together. For the first time, prosecutors believed they had enough to proceed publicly. Emma agreed to provide official testimony. Her statement would connect Victor Hale directly to the larger conspiracy and identify the person investigators believed stood at its center. Protective measures were increased. 2 officers guarded her temporary safe house. Rachel personally checked on her before leaving that evening. "You're doing the right thing," she said. Emma forced a weak smile. "I hope so." Those were the last words Rachel heard from her. Hours later, officers arrived for a scheduled transfer before the morning testimony. The front door was locked. The alarm remained active. Nothing appeared disturbed. Yet Emma Brooks was gone. No signs of forced entry. No evidence of a struggle. Only an empty room and a cold cup of coffee sitting on the kitchen table. Rachel stared at the scene in disbelief. Then she noticed something resting beside the cup. A single memory card. And suddenly she knew the nightmare was far from over. The memory card left behind after Emma Brooks vanished contained only a single file. Rachel Monroe expected another threat, another taunt from whoever remained hidden behind the disappearances. Instead, the video revealed something far more important. The recording showed Emma sitting alone in a dimly lit room. She appeared frightened but unharmed. Behind her was a concrete wall marked with a symbol investigators had previously recovered from Victor Hale's files. Emma looked directly into the camera. "If you're watching this," she said, "they've moved me again." The video abruptly ended. No explanation. No indication of location. But there was one critical clue. A faint mechanical sound repeated every few seconds in the background. Forensic analysts spent hours isolating the noise. Eventually, they identified it as part of an industrial ventilation system used in older underground facilities. The discovery pointed investigators toward a group of abandoned municipal properties on the outskirts of town. Rachel and Noah Price followed the lead immediately. One location stood out from the others. An abandoned water treatment facility closed nearly 20 years earlier. Official records showed little activity there since its closure. Yet utility data revealed occasional unexplained power consumption. Someone had been using the property. That evening, a search warrant was obtained. The facility appeared deserted when officers arrived. Rust covered the gates. Broken windows stared into darkness. Nature had slowly reclaimed much of the structure. Yet Rachel felt the same unease she experienced whenever a discovery brought her closer to the truth. Inside the building, investigators found little. Dust, debris, empty rooms. Then Noah noticed fresh footprints leading toward a sealed maintenance area. Behind a heavy steel door, they discovered a staircase descending underground. The deeper they traveled, the colder the air became. At the bottom waited something none of them expected. A massive archive. Rows of servers lined concrete walls. Thousands of labeled storage drives filled industrial shelving. Monitors flickered throughout the underground complex. The scale was overwhelming. Years, perhaps decades, of collected recordings. Rachel stared in disbelief. This was not a private obsession. It was an institution. A system carefully designed to document human lives. Forensic teams immediately began reviewing the archive. What they uncovered horrified everyone involved. The recordings extended far beyond surveillance. Victims were studied, manipulated, and isolated long before they disappeared. Anonymous messages destroyed relationships. False rumors damaged careers. Staged encounters created fear and paranoia. The goal was never immediate violence. The goal was control. Many victims were psychologically dismantled before anything physical occurred. Rachel watched footage of people slowly losing trust in friends, family members, and even themselves. The recordings documented emotional torture with chilling precision. Every weakness became a weapon. Every fear became a tool. Hours later, another devastating discovery emerged. Several videos showed meetings involving influential community figures, business leaders, former officials, respected public personalities. Many appeared aware of the operation. Some actively assisted it. Evidence was exchanged. Investigations were redirected. Witnesses were discredited. The network protecting the crimes reached far beyond Victor Hale. Rachel finally understood why so many cases had failed. The people responsible had spent years controlling the narrative. The town's most trusted figures were part of the deception. Everything residents believed about their community had been carefully manufactured. As investigators copied evidence from the servers, Rachel moved through the underground archive alone. Every shelf contained stolen pieces of human lives. Photographs, recordings, personal documents, entire histories reduced to files. Then she noticed a monitor powering itself on. No one touched it. The screen illuminated automatically. A video file began playing. Rachel stepped closer. The timestamp appeared in the corner. Her stomach tightened immediately. The recording was not old. It had been filmed only hours earlier. The image sharpened. A woman sat in a chair beneath a single light. Her hands were bound. Her face slowly came into focus. Rachel's blood ran cold. The woman on the screen was Emma Brooks.